Not the jumps, because I didn't do those.
And the Doctor Who question I have is that over the years here at Gallifrey, we've had a lot of different people come in, and they've all shared their stories about actors who weren't here. And the one we hear most about you is that you're playing with practical jokes. Did you do anything that you would like to? We can hear your side of.
Did you play any practical jokes in Doctor Who? Are you a bit of a practical joker? She said, apparently you're a practical joker.
Where did you get that from?
What's your source?
And a few other people.
People don't reveal their sources.
Yes, and they're not nasty practical jokes, but I managed to get the Royal Shakespeare Company once, and I used to write off letters on behalf of other people. In the Royal Shakespeare Company, there was a guy called Peter something or other. He was in charge of theatre go-round, which meant we went round doing Shakespeare for schools. And I wrote off to the House of Commons on behalf of him, i.e. with Royal Shakespeare paper, saying we'd come along and do it for the members of Parliament during the holiday recess. And I wrote one to Buckingham Palace Kitchens as well, saying we'd come along. He, fortunately for me, he'd gone on holiday, and when his son looked at the replies, thought, why hadn't Peter told me about this? The Kitchens said they hadn't got the facilities. The MPs wrote back and they said they'd be delighted to have the Royal Shakespeare Company, so 4 actors had to go along and give some readings to 40 members of Parliament in the House of Commons. And I got into a lot of trouble, but I said, it's great publicity for them. So.
Thank you for, but I also have to thank you for being the most accurate and the best of the Mr. Rochesters.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I know vaguely how old you are. Because that was 40 years ago, although it is on DVD, so I'm not I get letters now about Rochester because it went out, they didn't have it on DVD for a long time, and I get letters from 17 and 18-year-olds, and I send them a photograph back of what I look like now and say, isn't it a shame?
Well, that's another part. There's been so many versions of it. The Bronte adaptations have been done so many times. Do you watch subsequent versions and think, oh, I was better at that, or that was good? Or...
Yeah, I do watch them, but the thing is, I think we were lucky in that it was the most complete version of Jane Eyre that had ever been done. It was done in its entirety, and since then, everybody who's played it, it's been cut, shortened, and I think ours was the truest version of it. Whether I was, a lot of people, I'm very grateful, but I still get letters about my Rochester, which, and it's very kind of them to say that. But I think we did the most accurate version of it.
That was a long serial version, wasn't it?
Was it 6 episodes?
Yeah. Okay, next question.
Yes. So, at the end of the trial of the Time Lord, it was pretty well implied that the Valeyard could come back, or would come back, and I for one, completely expected that you would be back. But because, you were played such a strong character so well, and throughout the whole season was such a great presence. But what I was going to ask you was that ever a consideration that they said, well, maybe your character might come back, or anything like that? Was that ever?
No, it was never mentioned at all, because by the time the Colin Baker one had finished, that was the end of it. And then McGann did it, and then
McCoy. Sylvester McCoy was next. Sylvester McCoy was next after Colin. They had two years with Sylvester.
And then McGann did one for America, didn't he? Yeah. No, it's never mentioned. It's never been mentioned since. At all. And I worked with Moffat years ago on a thing called Press Gang, and I realised what a great... oh, you've seen it? I played a one-off in that, Colonel X, and it must have been about 20 years ago, and I thought this guy Moffat's going to go places, and I was absolutely right. I just want to be recognised as one of the doctors officially. You know what I mean? All the fans know.
Well, you seem to be.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next question.
Well, I have to say he sort of stole my thunder a little bit because actually, I wanted to give you a gift. We're starting a movement to bring back the Valeyard for the 50th anniversary special. You know?
Do you have a ribbon?
Yes, we got ribbons for you. So I just wanted to give them to you.
Yeah, please do. Come on down.
You weren't part of that demonstration out front this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. What
I think I'll have to give you some of the residuals.
That's lovely. And next question.
Well, actually, digging back into some earlier shows, I just saw Tailor Soldier Spy. And I was interested to know if you had any stories about that, because it's all fresh in my mind now.
Yeah, you're in really the definitive version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And do you have any tales from that experience?
How do you mean? How do you mean? I presume you've all seen the film, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, It
all
was
the
a bit-
people, there's so many good character actors on that. And so just anything you happen to remember, and if you don't, I just want to say it was great.
It was a long time ago, because I reckon it was around about 1977, 78. It had a lot of very fine actors in it, but there again, compared to the film, and I'm not going to say, some of the performances in the film were marvellous, but my wife said, it wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
Ours was 6 episodes, and that film was less comprehensible because it was shorter, I thought.
Yeah.
Because John le Carré he doesn't cheat, but you've got to pay attention to what he's saying, and it all ties up eventually, I think.
Well, I've had to read the book several times and still pick up new things, and the same with watching the DVDs.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was I'll just tell you that Alec Guinness had got such a big part that he learned that. We realised he'd learnt it when we had the first run-through. He wasn't looking at the script at all. So we thought, we'd better learn it as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll be wasting his time. I mean, it's not everybody's way around of working, but he knew he'd got to get ahead of it. So he virtually learnt it all, and he wrote all his part out in he had fantastic writing, very, rather like his character, precise, correct, beautiful handwriting, and he used to write all his part out, handwritten, so that it would stick more in his mind. I've never tried that, but I mean, it worked for him, and he was brilliant in it.
That's about the same time as he would have done Star Wars. Did he mention Star Wars at all?
Well, we were Tinker Tailor. There was a strike on during the last week, the BBC strike, and we thought we might not be able to get it finished. So for a week, I was stuck in this hotel with Alec Guinness and 2 other actors. We were broken at lunchtime, and he'd say, "Would you like some Veuve Clicquot, Michael?" And I said, "Oh yeah." So we'd have champagne at lunchtime. This happened for a whole week. And then the strike was off, and we were back at work again. But it was the time when he won an award for Star Wars. And he was such a modest man. He said, "You know, I've just got an award for Star Wars," and I was quite surprised, because it was a very small part he got in that. And I don't think he himself thought he deserved the award.
These aren't the awards I'm looking for. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. It's hard.
Never worked with children, animals, and comedians.
Thank you. Good question. And one last question, because we're running out of time, so that's us.
I know in an earlier question they talked about the possibility of the Valeyard coming back, and I know that you did reprise the Valeyard for Big Finish for Sympathy for the Devil as part of their Unbound series of what if plays. And I just wondered what it was like coming back to Doctor Who and coming back to the role of the Valeyard after so many years.
You mean he jests at Scars, wasn't it?
I apologize, he jests at Scars. Yes, you
That's
remember
right.
correctly.
Yeah, and it was marvellous, because this was years afterwards, and I was working with Bonnie Langford, who was on that Colin Baker one, yeah, it was great, because it was like going back to an old friend somehow, and I had to listen to my voice on the originals to see, but in my mind, I'd still got the same voice and the still characterisation. And it was like, as I just said, it was like meeting an old friend again and revelling in it, because they're very good scripts, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Good question. Well, yeah, I've never heard anyone applaud a question, but that's good. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and sadly time has beaten us, Michael.
It's been marvellous talking to you lot as well, because like my work, and I'm so pleased, because a lot of stuff I've done in England has never come over to the States, apart from certain channels which you might possibly miss, but you've been a great audience.
Thank you.
Me? Yes, definitely. Michael Jayston? Maybe, if Michael will indulge us, maybe because we want you to be an official doctor, maybe Michael will stand by the TARDIS and get some photographs. Would you do that? Yeah?